Pick up a rock, feel the weight of it, the cold, rough surface against your palm, the way your fingers curl around it naturally, as if the hand was made for exactly this. Now imagine doing that for the very first time. Not you, not anyone you know, someone older, much older. A creature standing at the edge of a shrinking forest, the savanna opening up ahead of them, holding a rock they had just deliberately struck against another rock to make it sharp. That moment happened approximately 3.3 million years ago, and nothing on Earth has been the same since. Here's the thing most people get wrong about tools. They think tool use is what makes us human. They picture a caveman inventing the wheel and call it the beginning of civilization. They assume that before tools, there was nothing, just animals, just instinct, just creatures reacting to a world they had no power to change. But that's not what the fossil record shows, and it's not what we see when we watch the rest of the animal kingdom right now, today. Chimpanzees strip leaves from twigs and push them into termite mounds to fish out insects. They crack nuts with stones. They've been observed using sharpened sticks to hunt small prey. Crows drop walnuts onto roads and wait for cars to crack them open. They'll even time the traffic lights, land after the light turns red, collect the nut before the cars move again. Octopuses carry coconut shells across the ocean floor and assemble them into shelters. Dolphins in Shark Bay wrap sponges around their snouts to protect themselves while foraging on rocky seabeds. Tools are not uniquely human. So what is? That question sounds simple. It isn't. And the answer will change how you think about almost everything your species has ever made. To answer it, you have to go back, not just to the first stone tools, further, to the world that made the tool user possible. 3.5 million years ago, the climate in East Africa was changing. The vast tropical forests that had sheltered our ancestors for millions of years were contracting. The land was opening up. Grasslands stretched further than any tree line. And the creatures who had spent their evolutionary history in the canopy, creatures built for climbing, for gripping branches, for a life measured in leaves and fruit, were being pushed out into open ground. This was not a good situation. Out in the open, they were exposed, slower than the predators around them, weaker, without claws, without venom, without the bulk of the megafauna they now shared a landscape with. They had no obvious reason to survive what was coming, but something had already changed in their bodies that would turn out to matter enormously. They had started walking upright. Bipedalism almost certainly evolved for reasons that had nothing to do with tools. It may have been about covering long distances more efficiently across open terrain. It may have been about regulating body heat. An upright body exposes less surface area to the direct force of the midday sun. It may have been about freeing the hands to carry food or infants across distances that quadrupeds would struggle with. There are competing theories, and paleoanthropologists still argue about it. What matters is what walking upright did to the hands. It freed them. For millions of years, primate hands had two primary jobs: gripping branches and manipulating food. Powerful, yes. Dexterous, yes. But committed, locked into a role that locomotion demanded. The moment those same hands no longer needed to participate in moving the body forward, they became available for something else entirely. They became, for the first time in evolutionary history, a general-purpose instrument waiting for a purpose to emerge. The hands were ready before the mind fully knew what to do with them. The oldest confirmed stone tools we found, the Lomequian tools, discovered in Kenya in 2015, date to 3.3 million years ago. They predate our own genus, Homo, entirely. The creature that made them was likely Australopithecus, upright, small-brained by our standards, but capable of something that no analysis of its anatomy fully predicted: deliberate stone napping. To make a sharp stone tool, you don't just hit one rock with another. You have to select the right kind of rock. Not every stone fractures cleanly. You have to understand, on some level, that the rock has a hidden edge inside it that can be released with the right strike at the right angle. You have to hold a mental image of what the rock could become before it becomes it. You have to want an outcome that does not yet exist and work backwards from that outcome to a plan. That's not instinct. That's not even learned behavior in the usual sense. That is causal reasoning. It means understanding that your action will produce a specific outcome, that the future can be different from the present, that an object is not just what it is, but what it could be made into. This is the cognitive leap, not the rock, the thought behind the rock. When a crow drops a walnut on a road, it has learned through trial and error that cars crack walnuts. That's impressive. That's genuine problem solving. But the crow is working with the world as it finds it. It discovered a solution that already existed inside the environment. The early hominin who picked up a rock and struck it deliberately to create a cutting edge was doing something categorically different. They were imposing a concept onto the physical world. They were looking at raw, unbroken stone and seeing something that didn't exist yet, and then making it exist. That gap between finding a solution and inventing one is enormous. It may be the most important cognitive gap in the history of life on Earth. But here's where it gets stranger. The tool wasn't just something we made. It was something that made us. This is the part the simple narrative of human evolution consistently leaves out. We tend to tell the story as brain gets bigger, therefore tools get made. Cause and effect, clean and linear. And that's partially true. The expansion of the prefrontal cortex, the regions associated with planning, abstract thought, and impulse control, enabled the cognitive leap that deliberate tool use required. But the causality runs in both directions. Tool use changed the brain that was doing it. When early hominins began regularly manipulating objects with precision, gripping, striking, shaping, hafting, the neural pathways governing fine motor control expanded and deepened. The hand and the brain co-evolved across geological time. The more sophisticated the tool use, the more the brain reorganized itself around the demands of making and using tools. And a brain reorganized around tools became capable of conceiving more sophisticated tools, which demanded further neural reorganization. This is called gene-culture coevolution. The behavior shapes the biology. The biology enables more complex behavior. There is no clean starting point. The loop was already running by the time anyone could have noticed it. There is evidence of this process in your own body right now. The human hand is extraordinary, not just in what it can do, but in how much of the brain it occupies. The region of the motor cortex dedicated to controlling the hand is disproportionately large, larger than the area governing your entire torso. Neuroscientists sometimes illustrate this as the cortical homunculus, a distorted figure where the hands balloon outward, enormous and grotesque, while the rest of the body shrinks into near insignificance. Your brain is, in meaningful part, a hand operating system, and that system was built across millions of years by the act of making things. The tools got better, slowly at first, almost incomprehensibly slowly by modern standards. For hundreds of thousands of years, stone tool technology barely changed. The same basic hand axe design persisted across so vast a stretch of time that it strains any intuition shaped by the modern world. One design, 1 million years, minimal variation. Then something shifted. Around 300,000 years ago, the rate of change begins to increase. New materials appear, composite tools, blades attached to handles, multiplying the force a hand could deliver. Projectile weapons that extend the reach of the body beyond the body itself, and eventually, the most powerful tools of all, the ones that don't look like tools. Language. Language is a tool. It is a technology for transmitting a model of the world from one mind to another across time and space. It runs on the same underlying cognitive infrastructure as stone knapping, the ability to hold an abstract representation in mind and manipulate it deliberately. The word spear is not a spear. It is a symbol that stands in for a spear, a compressed mental shorthand that lets one mind hand an idea directly to another. That is the same operation as seeing a sharp edge inside an unbroken rock. Abstract representation, intentional manipulation, desired outcome. Writing is a tool. Mathematics is a tool. Money is a tool. The scientific method is a tool. The legal system is a tool. The phone in your pocket is a tool. The algorithm deciding what you watch tonight is a tool made of tools made of tools, running on infrastructure built by other tools, designed by minds shaped by millions of years of making things. We didn't stop at the rock. We have never stopped. Every technology in human history is the same loop, running faster, a mind imposing a concept onto the physical world, the world changing in response, the changed world shaping the minds that inhabit it. We are not simply a species that uses tools. We are a species that is, in some deep and uncomfortable sense, constructed by them. And yet, go back to that moment, 3.3 million years ago. The shrinking forest, the open ground stretching further than anything that lives in trees was built to navigate. A creature with no obvious right to survive what is coming picks up a rock, strikes it against another rock. A flake falls away. The edge is sharp. They didn't know what they were starting. They had no concept of history, no ability to imagine the chain of consequence that would unspool from this moment forward. No sense that this act would echo into a species that would eventually split the atom, sequence its own genome, and stand on another world and look back at the pale blue point of home. They just needed to cut something. But in the act of making that edge, in the act of looking at the world as it was and deciding it should be different, something crossed a threshold that nothing had crossed before. Not a physical threshold, a conceptual one. The rock didn't change. It was always just a rock, but the mind that held it looked at what existed and saw what didn't, and then it reached out and made the gap between those two things disappear. That is the only tool that ever really mattered, and you are still using it.